The evening sun cast long shadows across the Grand Plaza Hotel's marble floors as Alex cleared away the half-empty champagne glasses from table 7. 26 years old and still wearing a server's uniform when he'd once dreamed of concert halls, life had a funny way of humbling people. He balanced the tray carefully, avoiding eye contact with the guests in designer clothes who never really saw him anyway. Another boring rich people party, his coworker May whispered as they passed each other. Same faces, different day. Alex nodded with a tired smile. These corporate events all blended together after a while. Men in expensive suits talking too loudly about money while barely touching the gourmet food that would end up in the trash. The soft background music from the hotel's sound system was being drowned out by their boasting. What a waste of good speakers. Did you hear who's here tonight?
May added, eyes wide with excitement.
Victor Reed himself. Alex nearly dropped his tray. Everyone knew about Victor Reed, the tech billionaire who'd built an empire from nothing, whose face graced magazine covers monthly, whose name appeared in headlines almost daily for some wild business move or eccentric challenge. Reed was known for testing people, offering life-changing opportunities wrapped in impossible tasks. Just don't spill anything on him, warned May before disappearing into the kitchen. Alex continued working, stealing glances at the crowd, trying to spot the famous billionaire. The ballroom buzzed with energy. Over 200 of the city's elite gathered for what was supposed to be a charity fundraiser, but felt more like a competition of wealth. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, reflecting light onto the faces of people who controlled more money than Alex would see in several lifetimes. That's when he noticed the crowd shifting, parting like the sea as someone moved toward the center of the room. A tall man with salt and pepper hair and piercing eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they landed on. Victor Reed had taken the floor. Reed tapped a knife against his glass, the sharp ping cutting through conversation. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice commanding immediate attention, "I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight and opening your checkbooks for a good cause." Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. "But charity isn't just about writing checks, is it?" Reed continued, moving toward the grand piano that sat unused in the corner of the ballroom. "It's about seeing potential where others don't, about taking chances." Alex froze mid-step, tray in hand, watching as the billionaire ran his fingers lightly over the polished black surface of the piano. Something in Reed's expression changed, a glint of mischief perhaps. "I have an announcement to make," Reed said, turning to face the crowd again. "As some of you may know, I'm launching a new venture next month. Revolutionary stuff, game-changing." The room leaned forward collectively, hungry for inside information. "What you don't know is that I haven't chosen a CEO yet." Reed smiled, enjoying the surprised murmurs that spread through the room. "And I've decided tonight's the night I'll make that decision." Alex should have continued working, should have taken the dirty glasses to the kitchen, but found himself rooted to the spot. Reed's energy was magnetic, his unpredictability creating a tension that held everyone captive. "This piano," Reed said, patting the instrument, "belonged to my mother. She taught music to neighborhood kids for free, believing everyone deserved a chance to create beauty." His voice softened momentarily before hardening again. "Unlike many of you who were handed opportunities, I had to make my own. So tonight I'm creating an opportunity." He lifted the piano's fallboard, revealing the keys beneath. "I'll make whoever can move me with their playing the CEO of my new venture. Salary starts at 7 figures. Shocked whispers erupted around the room. Was this a joke? Reed was known for outlandish gestures, but this seemed extreme even for him. "Anyone?" a woman in a red dress asked, laughing nervously. "Surely you have requirements." "The only requirement is that you move me," Reed replied simply. "I'm not looking for technical perfection. I'm looking for soul. For someone who understands that business, like music, requires both structure and passion." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. These were powerful business leaders, tech innovators, marketing geniuses, but apparently not musicians. No one stepped forward. Reed's expression darkened slightly. "Come now. 200 of the best and brightest in this room, and not one of you is willing to take a risk? This is exactly what's wrong with business today. Everyone wants guaranteed returns. No one wants to be vulnerable." Alex felt a tightness in his chest. The piano seemed to call to him from across the room. 4 years at the music conservatory before dropping out to care for his sick father meant his fingers still remembered, Late nights practicing on the hotel lobby piano after everyone had gone home had kept his skills sharp, even if no one ever heard him play. Well then, Reed continued, scanning the crowd with obvious disappointment. I suppose I'll have to... His eyes landed on Alex standing frozen with the serving tray. You there? Alex glanced behind himself, certain Reed must be addressing someone else. Yes, you. Server boy, with the tray. Reed's voice carried a challenge. You look like you want to play. The crowd turned to stare, some guests snickering at the notion. Alex felt his cheeks burn as 200 pairs of eyes focused on him. The invisible server suddenly, uncomfortably visible. Mr. Patel,
The event manager appeared at Alex's side.
hissing under his breath, don't even think about it. Get back to work. But Reed was already gesturing impatiently. Come on, don't be shy. What's the worst that could happen? You embarrass yourself in front of people who won't remember your face tomorrow? Or, his eyes gleamed, you change your life forever. Sir, Mr. Patel addressed Reed directly, professional smile plastered on his face. Our staff is working. Perhaps one of your esteemed guests. I didn't ask for your input, Reed cut him off coldly. I asked him. He pointed directly at Alex. Unless you're afraid? It's okay if you are. Most people live their entire lives afraid of moments exactly like this one. Alex thought about his father, once a brilliant pianist himself, now confined to a hospital bed, about the medical bills piling up on their kitchen table, about the countless nights he'd spent playing to an empty room, imagining an audience that never materialized. Well, Reed prompted, an edge of mockery in his tone. What's it going to be, server boy? Back to picking up dirty glasses, or are you going to show these people what courage looks like? The tray in Alex's hands suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Mr. Patel was glaring daggers at him. This job wasn't much, but it paid the rent. The crowd watched with detached amusement, treating the moment like entertainment, a billionaire taunting a server for their pleasure. But beyond all that, the piano waited. Black and white keys promising both risk and possibility. Alex carefully set down his tray on the nearest table, ignoring Mr. Patel's outraged expression. The crowd parted reluctantly as he walked toward the piano, some guests whispering behind their hands, others watching with curious eyes. Reed stepped aside, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. What's your name? He asked as Alex approached. Alex, he answered, his voice steadier than he expected. Well, Alex, Reed said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Show us what you've got. Remember, a CEO position is on the line. He chuckled, clearly enjoying the drama he'd created. No pressure. Alex stood beside the grand piano, aware of his rumpled server's uniform, of his hands that smelled faintly of cleaning solution, of the vast gulf between himself and everyone else in the room. For a moment, doubt crashed over him like a wave. This was crazy. Humiliating. He should walk away. Then he remembered his father's words. Music isn't about who's listening. It's about what you need to say. Alex sat down on the bench, adjusted it slightly, and placed his hands over the keys. The room fell silent, holding its collective breath, some waiting for disaster, others for surprise. Reed himself watching with calculated interest. Alex closed his eyes, shutting out the stares, the judgment, the impossibility of it all. And then, he began to play. The first notes filled the room like raindrops, gentle, hesitant, questioning. Alex's fingers remembered the keys better than his mind did, muscle memory taking over where conscious thought failed. He played the opening bars of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor, a piece that told a story all its own. For the first few seconds, he could still hear the muffled whispers of the crowd, still feel their judgment heavy on his shoulders. His tie felt too tight, his uniform too stiff, his presence too small for this grand room with its grand people. The weight of 200 stares pressed down on him. Then something shifted. The music began to speak, and Alex began to listen. The room, the crowd, even Victor Reed himself, they all faded to shadows at the edges of his awareness. There was only the piano now, only the conversation between his fingers and the keys, only the story unfolding note by note. The piece moved from its questioning beginning to something deeper, more complex. Alex's right hand danced across the high notes while his left built a foundation of chords beneath. The music spoke of longing, of roads not taken, of dreams deferred but not abandoned. He thought of his father, once a celebrated pianist who gave it all up to teach music at a struggling public school. The man who spent evenings showing Alex how to position his hands, how to let the music breathe, how to play not just with technical precision but with heart. The same man who now lay in a hospital bed, bills mounting higher than the medication could reach. The tempo increased. Alex leaned into the keys, no longer playing the piano but having a conversation with it. In that moment, he wasn't a server performing for the wealthy. He was just a human being with something to say. The crowd's whispers had stopped entirely. Even the clinking of glasses had gone silent. In their place was only the sound of the piano echoing through the ballroom, bouncing off crystal chandeliers and marble floors, finding its way into ears that weren't used to truly listening. From the corner of his eye, Alex could see Reed's expression changing. The mocking smile had disappeared, replaced by something harder to read. Surprise, perhaps, or confusion. The billionaire had moved closer to the piano, watching Alex's hands with intense focus. The piece built toward its climax, growing more passionate, more demanding. Alex's fingers flew across the keys, no longer tentative but commanding. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he poured everything into the music. His frustration at opportunities denied. His guilt at not being able to save his father. His anger at a system that reduced him to server boy in the eyes of men like Reed. The final section arrived like a storm, thunderous, chaotic, beautiful in its intensity. Alex's hands became a blur. The notes crashed like waves against rocks, relentless and raw. He was no longer playing the piece as written. He was reinterpreting it through the lens of his own life, adding flourishes and emotions Chopin might never have imagined but would surely have recognized. When the final notes faded into silence, Alex kept his eyes closed, hands hovering above the keys. He didn't want to see the faces of the crowd, didn't want to be pulled back into reality just yet. In this moment, suspended between the last note and whatever came next, he was neither server nor performer. He just was. The silence stretched for one heartbeat, then two, then three. Then someone began to clap. A single pair of hands at first, then another joining in, then more, until the applause rolled through the room like thunder. Alex finally opened his eyes to see the crowd on their feet, their faces transformed. Gone was the detached amusement, replaced by genuine emotion. Some wiping away tears, others looking stunned, all of them seeing him, really seeing him, perhaps for the first time. Victor Reed remained still, not clapping, just watching Alex with an expression impossible to decipher. The room gradually quieted as Reed approached the piano, his expensive shoes clicking against the marble floor. "What's your full name?" Reed asked, his voice lacking the mocking edge it had carried earlier. "Alex Chen," he answered, suddenly aware again of his server's uniform, of the sweat on his brow, of the vast difference between himself and the man standing before him. Reed nodded slowly as if confirming something to himself. "And where did you learn to play like that?" Alex stood from the piano bench, feeling unsteady. "My father taught me. He was the real musician in the family." "Was? He's sick. Cancer." The words felt strange to speak in this opulent room, as if reality and fantasy were colliding in ways they shouldn't. "I was at the conservatory, but had to drop out to help care for him." Reed's eyes narrowed slightly. "So you're working here instead?" "3 jobs, actually," Alex said, a hint of defiance creeping into his voice. "This one teaching piano to kids on weekends, and night shifts at the hospital where my dad's staying." The crowd had gone quiet, listening to this exchange with the same attention they'd given to the music moments before. "Mr. Reed," interrupted a tall woman in an expensive suit, stepping forward with her hand extended. "Brilliant marketing stunt. Very moving. Now, about that CEO position, I think you'll find my experience at Goldman Sachs makes me the ideal candidate for your venture." Reed didn't even glance her way. "The position is no longer available," he said flatly. The woman's hand remained suspended in air. "I beg your pardon?" "You heard the music," Reed replied, his eyes still fixed on Alex. "Did you feel anything?" "Well, it was certainly impressive for an amateur," the woman said, faltering slightly. "But surely you're not suggesting—" "What I'm suggesting," Reed cut her off, "is that you and everyone else in this room had the same opportunity he did. You chose not to take it." "He did." Alex felt dizzy. "This couldn't be happening. Things like this didn't happen to people like him." "Mr. Reed, I don't understand. I don't have any business experience." I don't even have a degree. Reed smiled for the first time. Not the mocking smile from earlier, but something more genuine. Neither did I when I started. What you do have is something far rarer, the courage to be vulnerable, to take a risk when the odds were stacked against you. He gestured around the room. 200 of the best and brightest in this city, and not one of them willing to risk looking foolish. But you were, Mr. Chin, Mr. Patel hissed from nearby, his face a storm cloud of fury. Return to your duties immediately or consider yourself terminated. Alex hesitated, caught between worlds, the familiar, safety of his server's role, and the impossible, opportunity before him. Reed raised an eyebrow at Patel. I don't think he works for you anymore. He turned back to Alex. Unless, of course, you'd prefer to continue clearing tables? The room held its breath, waiting for his answer. Alex thought of his father, of the hospital bills, of the years of struggling. He thought of the conservatory dreams he'd set aside, believing they were lost forever. What exactly would I be CEO of? He asked cautiously. Reed's smile widened. Smart question. Always know what you're saying yes to. He addressed the crowd again. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to officially announce the Reed Foundation for Musical Arts, a non-profit dedicated to bringing music education to communities that can't afford it, providing instruments to schools that have lost their arts funding, and offering scholarships to talented students regardless of their background. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as Reed continued. The foundation needs someone who understands both sides, someone who knows what it means to have talent without opportunity, someone who can speak the language of music as fluently as the language of survival. He turned back to Alex. Someone like you. I don't know the first thing about running a foundation, Alex admitted. You'll learn. I'll teach you the business side just as your father taught you music. Reed extended his hand. 7 figures as promised. Starting tomorrow. What do you say? Alex looked down at Reed's offered hand, then back up at his face, searching for any sign of deception, any hint this was all an elaborate joke at his expense. Why me? He asked finally. Why not someone with experience? Someone from your world? Reed's expression softened slightly. Because you made me remember why music matters. Why anything matters? He glanced at the crowd. These people play it safe. They calculate risks. They think inside boxes of their own making. He nodded toward the piano. But you played like someone with nothing to lose and everything to give. That's exactly who I want building this foundation. Alex took a deep breath, thinking of his father's words again. Opportunities don't announce themselves with trumpets, son. They slip in through side doors when you're busy doing what you love. He reached out and shook Reed's hand. The room erupted in applause again, some genuine, some merely polite, some masking envy or disbelief. But for once in his life, Alex wasn't concerned with what others thought of him. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel something dangerous, something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. 3 days later, Alex stood in front of a glass building that seemed to touch the clouds. His reflection stared back at him, a stranger in new clothes. The suit Reed had sent to his apartment still felt stiff and unfamiliar against his skin, the leather shoes pinching his toes with every step. He'd spent 20 minutes that morning struggling with his tie, watching YouTube tutorials on his cracked phone screen until he managed something presentable. You can do this, he whispered to himself, clutching the leather portfolio, another gift from Reed, that contained nothing but a single sheet with his father's hospital information. Taking a deep breath, he pushed through the revolving doors into the lobby. The security guard looked up as Alex approached the desk. Can I help you? I'm Alex Chen. I have a meeting with Victor Reed. The words felt strange in his mouth, like lines from someone else's script. The guard's expression changed instantly. Of course, Mr. Chen. Mr. Reed is expecting you. He made a quick call, then gestured toward the elevators. Top floor. His assistant will meet you. The elevator rose smoothly, numbers flashing on the digital display, 10, 20, 30, 40. Alex's stomach seemed to stay somewhere around floor 15. What was he doing here? 3 days ago, he'd been carrying trays and worrying about paying next month's rent. Now he was supposedly going to run a multi-million-dollar foundation. It was madness. The doors opened to reveal a woman with a tablet waiting for him. Mr. Chen? I'm Diane, Mr. Reed's chief of staff. Welcome to Reed Enterprises. Her handshake was firm, her smile professional. "This way, please." She led him through an open office space where people typed furiously at computers or spoke in hushed tones on phones. Some glanced up as he passed, curiosity in their eyes. Had news of the hotel incident spread already? Did they know he was a server who'd never even finished college? Reed's office took up the entire corner of the building, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of the city that made Alex dizzy. The billionaire stood looking out over the skyline, hands clasped behind his back. "Alex," Reed said without turning around. "Right on time. What do you see when you look out there?" Alex approached the window cautiously. "Buildings, streets, people." Reed nodded. "Most people see that, but I see music. The rhythm of traffic lights changing. The melody of human movement. The harmony of systems working together." He finally turned to face Alex. "That's what I'm hoping you'll bring to the foundation. The ability to see music where others see only noise." Diane cleared her throat. "Mr. Reed, the board members are gathering in the conference room." Reed checked his watch. "Already? Fine. Alex, ready to meet your team?" "My team?" Alex's mouth went dry. "Don't you think we should talk about, I don't have any experience with—" "The best way to learn to swim is to jump in the deep end." Reed cut him off, already heading for the door. "Besides, I hate long orientations. Boring for everyone involved." Alex followed Reed and Diane down a hallway to a large conference room where 10 people in expensive suits sat around a polished table. They rose as Reed entered, their expressions a mix of respect and wariness. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reed announced, "meet Alex Chen, the new CEO of the Reed Foundation for Musical Arts." The silence that followed was deafening. Alex could feel their stares like physical pressure, evaluating, judging, dismissing. A gray-haired man spoke first. "Mr. Reed, while we appreciate your unconventional approach to recruitment, perhaps you could clarify Mr. Chen's qualifications for this position." Reed's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course, Richard. Alex's qualifications are that I chose him. That's all any of you need to know." He turned to Alex. "These are the board members who will help guide the foundation's work. Richard here thinks I've lost my mind, but he's too polite to say it directly." Richard's face reddened. "That's not—" "It's exactly what you're thinking," Reed interrupted. "What you're all thinking. That's fine. Skepticism is healthy." He gestured for Alex to take the seat at the head of the table. "I have another meeting. Alex, they're all yours," and just like that, Reed was gone, leaving Alex alone with 10 pairs of eyes staring at him expectantly. "So," Richard said, leaning forward, "do you have any experience in nonprofit management, Mr. Chen?" "No," Alex admitted. "Educational administration. Knowing grant writing, fundraising, board governance." Alex swallowed hard. "No to all of those." Richard exchanged glances with the others. "Then perhaps you could tell us what experience you do have that qualifies you to run a $100 million foundation." $100 million? Alex felt the room spin slightly. "I play the piano," he said quietly. A woman at the far end of the table laughed sharply. "Is this a joke? Victor's idea of a publicity stunt?" Alex thought about getting up and walking out. It would be easier to go back to his 3 jobs, to the world he understood. But then he thought of his father in the hospital, of the kids at the public school who had their music program cut last year, of how it felt to play that piano in front of all those people who never would have given him a second glance otherwise. He straightened in his chair. "You're right. I don't have the experience you do. Any of you. I was carrying drinks at the Grand Plaza 3 days ago." He watched their eyes widen. "But I do know what it means to have music save your life, then have it taken away because of money. I know what it's like to watch schools cut arts programs while spending millions on sports facilities. I know what it means to have talent without opportunity." The room was silent now, but a different kind of silence. "Mr. Reed didn't hire me for my resume," Alex continued, finding confidence in the truth. "He hired me because I understand the problem this foundation is trying to solve from the inside out. You all know how to run a foundation? Great. I need that knowledge. But what I bring is the perspective of the people we're trying to help." Richard sat back, studying Alex with new interest. "Fair enough. But good intentions don't run organizations. There's a steep learning curve ahead of you." "Then I'll learn," Alex said simply, "starting now." The next 4 hours were a crash course in everything Alex didn't know. The board members, though still skeptical, began walking him through the foundation structure, its mission statement, its budget. They showed him preliminary plans for programs targeting schools in low-income areas, scholarship initiatives, instrument donation drives. To Alex's surprise, his input was actually sought on several key points. "These music teachers you want to hire," he said. Looking over a budget proposal, their salaries seemed too low. A woman named Lynn raised her eyebrows. "They're standard for the industry." "Which is why good teachers leave the industry," Alex countered. "My father taught music for 20 years. He loved it, but he couldn't afford my mom's medical bills on that salary. That's why there's such high turnover." "Increasing salaries would mean fewer teachers overall," Richard pointed out. Alex nodded.
Maybe. But what if we offered part-time positions to working musicians?
"They get steady income alongside their performance work. Kids get teachers who are actively involved in the music world, and we build connections with the local music scene." The board members exchanged glances. "That's actually not a bad idea," Lynn admitted. By the time the meeting ended, Alex's head was swimming with information. As people filed out, Richard lingered behind. "You surprised me today," the older man said. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Some trust fund kid Reed was doing a favor for. Or worse, someone who slept their way into the position." Richard shrugged apologetically. "Reed's methods can be erratic." "I'm learning that," Alex said with a weak smile. "You've got a lot to learn, but you might just work out." Richard handed him a business card. "Call me anytime." "I mean that." After everyone left, Alex sat alone in the conference room, staring at the notes he'd taken. The reality of his new role was beginning to sink in. He had an opportunity to actually make a difference, to create the kind of support system he and his father had needed years ago. His phone rang. "The hospital." His heart raced as he answered. "Mr. Chen? Your father's asking for you," the nurse said. "He's having a good day. I thought you might want to come by." "I'll be right there," Alex promised. 30 minutes later, he walked into his father's hospital room. Still wearing his new suit, his father looked up from his bed, eyes widening. "What's this? Did somebody die?" Alex laughed, the tension of the day finally breaking. "No, Dad, actually something kind of amazing happened." He pulled a chair close to the bed. "You're not going to believe this, but..." As Alex told the story, his father's eyes filled with tears. "A music foundation? And you're running it?" His father shook his head in wonder. "I always told you music would open doors." Alex reached for his father's hand. "I'm scared, Dad. I don't know if I can do this." His father squeezed his fingers weakly. "Remember what I used to tell you before recitals? When you were so nervous you thought you'd throw up?" Alex smiled at the memory. "Play the music, not the fear." "Exactly," his father nodded. "Run the foundation, not the fear." For the first time since shaking Reed's hand, Alex felt like maybe, just maybe, he could do this after all. 3 months passed in a blur of meetings, paperwork, and crash courses in nonprofit management. Alex's apartment now overflowed with books on leadership and finance that he read late into the night. His kitchen table had disappeared beneath spreadsheets and grant proposals. The suit no longer felt strange against his skin, though he still loosened his tie the moment he was alone. Today marked a milestone, the official public launch of the Reed Foundation for Musical Arts. Alex stood backstage at the community center they'd renovated in one of the city's poorest neighborhoods, listening to the excited chatter of children waiting to perform. Nervous, Victor Reed appeared beside him, looking unusually casual in jeans and a button-down shirt. Terrified, Alex admitted. "What if this doesn't work? What if we've spent all this money and it doesn't make any difference?" Reed studied the children tuning their instruments. "See that boy with the violin? The one who keeps adjusting his bow? 3 months ago, he'd never touched an instrument. Now he's first chair in our youth orchestra." Alex nodded. He knew the boy's story well. A quiet kid from a tough neighborhood who'd found his voice through music. "That's already a difference," Reed said simply. "The rest will follow." The renovation had transformed a neglected building into a state-of-the-art music center with practice rooms, performance spaces, and classrooms filled with donated instruments. Phase 1 of Alex's vision, a place where any child could learn music regardless of their family's income. Diane appeared with her ever-present tablet. 5 minutes, gentlemen. The press is seated and the auditorium's at capacity." Reed raised an eyebrow. Full house? Good sign. We had to turn people away, Diane confirmed. And the live stream already has thousands watching. Alex straightened his tie one last time. Let's do this. The lights dimmed as they took their places on stage. Camera flashes punctuated the darkness. Alex could make out his father in the front row, looking thin but present, finally out of the hospital thanks to the health insurance that came with Alex's new position. Reed stepped to the microphone first. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming today. 3 months ago, I made what many called a crazy decision. Laughter rippled through the audience. I offered the CEO position of a $100 million foundation to someone with no business experience whatsoever. More laughter, though Alex noticed his board members shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Today, Reed continued, I'm proud to say it was the best decision I've made in years. The Reed Foundation isn't just another vanity project or tax write-off. Under Alex Chen's leadership, it's become something truly transformative. Reed gestured for Alex to join him at the podium. Cameras clicked rapidly as they shook hands. The real stars today aren't us, Alex said, leaning into the microphone. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. They're the 32 children who will perform for you in a few minutes. Kids who might never have discovered their musical gifts without this program. But before they show you what they've learned, I want to share a quick story. He took a deep breath, scanning the audience. When I was 10, my father took me to see a symphony orchestra. We sat in the very back row because that's all we could afford. I watched a pianist play Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, and it changed my life. On the bus ride home, I told my dad I wanted to learn piano more than anything. Alex could see his father smiling through tears. We couldn't afford lessons or an instrument. But my dad took on an extra job washing dishes at a restaurant that had an old upright piano in the back room. He arranged to stay late and clean the kitchen in exchange for letting me practice on that piano for an hour each night. For 3 years, he worked double shifts so I could learn music. The audience had gone completely silent. That's the kind of sacrifice parents make when they believe in their children's dreams. But they shouldn't have to. Music isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. It teaches discipline, teamwork, and emotional intelligence. It gives kids a voice when they might not have words. And yes, sometimes it provides a way out of circumstances that seem hopeless. Alex gestured to the wings where the children waited. Every child deserves what my father fought to give me. That's not just the Foundation's mission statement, it's my personal promise. The applause was thunderous. As it died down, Alex smiled. And now please welcome our very first Reed Foundation Youth Orchestra. The children filed onto the stage, instruments in hand, faces serious with concentration. Their conductor, a respected musician who jumped at the chance to work with the program, raised her baton. The music that filled the auditorium wasn't perfect. There were missed notes and timing issues, but there was also something pure and powerful about it, the sound of children discovering their own capabilities. As the orchestra played, Alex watched the audience. The wealthy donors Reed had invited were sitting forward in their seats, genuinely moved. Parents from the neighborhood dabbed at tears. Media people who'd come expecting a standard photo op were actually listening. When the performance ended, the standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. Backstage afterward, as children excitedly chattered with their families, Reed pulled Alex aside. Well done, the billionaire said quietly. The kids were amazing, Alex agreed. I wasn't talking about the performance. Reed nodded toward the crowd of reporters gathering nearby. 3 months ago, you could barely speak in a board meeting. Today, you commanded that room like you've been doing this your whole life. Alex shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I just told the truth. That's exactly why it worked, Reed said. Come on, the press wants to talk to us. This is the part where we convince more people to write big checks. The next hour was a whirlwind of interviews. Alex found himself explaining the Foundation's 3-phase plan to reporters from major networks. First, community music centers in underserved neighborhoods, then in-school programs to rebuild music education where it had been cut, and finally a scholarship pathway to connect talented kids with conservatories and universities. And where do you see yourself in 5 years, Mr. Chen? One reporter asked. Still running the foundation or moving on to other ventures? The question caught Alex off guard. He hadn't thought that far ahead. 3 months ago, he'd been thinking only of surviving the next day. In 5 years, he said slowly, I hope we'll have centers like this in every neighborhood that needs one. I hope thousands of kids will have discovered music who otherwise wouldn't have had the chance. And yes, I plan to be right here, doing this work. Later, as the crowd thinned out, Alex found his father waiting patiently in a quiet corner. I'm proud of you, son, his father said, embracing him carefully. Your mother would be too. Alex swallowed the lump in his throat. I couldn't have done any of this without you. His father shook his head. This is all you. I just showed you where the door was. You're the one who walked through it. Mr. Chen, a small voice interrupted them. The boy with the violin stood there, instrument case clutched to his chest. I just wanted to say thank you. For everything. Alex knelt down to meet the boy's eyes. You don't need to thank me. Just keep playing, the boy nodded solemnly. I will. Maybe someday I can be like you. After the boy left, Alex's father chuckled. Looks like you've got a fan. I'm nothing special, Alex said, watching the boy rejoin his family. You are to him, his father replied. Just like that pianist was to you all those years ago. On the drive home, Alex's phone buzzed with messages. The foundation's social media was exploding with positive comments. Donation pledges were pouring in. A major music equipment manufacturer wanted to partner on instrument donations. A famous pop star had tweeted about wanting to give a benefit concert. But among all the notifications, one message stood out. From Richard, the board member who'd been his harshest critic that first day. You proved me wrong, it read simply. Well done. Alex smiled to himself, thinking of how far he'd come from that evening at the Grand Plaza. He still played piano every day, usually early in the morning before work. But now he played without fear, without the weight of what might have been. The foundation was making a difference. He was making a difference. And somehow, against all odds, the music that had been his escape had become his purpose. As the city lights blurred past his car window, Alex made a silent promise. To read, to his father, to himself, but most of all to that boy with the violin and all the children like him. This was just the beginning. 2 years to the day after Alex first sat down at that piano in the Grand Plaza Hotel, he found himself back in the same ballroom. The space had been transformed. The grand piano now stood center stage on a raised platform, surrounded by 50 young musicians in formal attire, nervously adjusting their bow ties and smoothing their dresses. Full circle, Victor Reed said, appearing beside him with 2 glasses of sparkling water. Feeling nostalgic? Alex accepted the glass with a smile. A little. Hard to believe it's been 2 years. Harder to believe what you've accomplished in those 2 years, Reed countered, nodding toward the banner hanging above the stage. Reed Foundation 2nd Anniversary Gala, celebrating 15 music centers and 5,000 young musicians. The ballroom buzzed with energy as guests arrived, wealthy donors in designer clothes mingling with music teachers, student musicians, and parents from neighborhoods across the city. This wasn't just another charity event. It was a showcase of everything the foundation had built. There's someone I want you to meet, Reed said, guiding Alex through the crowd to where a tall man with salt and pepper hair stood examining the program. Alex, this is Thomas Wilson, Dean of the National Conservatory. Alex extended his hand, trying to hide his surprise. The National Conservatory was the most prestigious music school in the country, the same one he'd dreamed of attending. Before life took him in a different direction, Dr. Wilson has been following our scholarship program with interest, Reed explained. More than interest, Wilson corrected. Admiration. You've identified talented students we might never have found through traditional channels. 5 of your scholarship recipients will be joining us next fall. That's wonderful news, Alex said, feeling a surge of pride. Finding pathways to higher education for their most promising students had been phase 3 of his plan, the part he'd worried might be hardest to achieve. Actually, I was hoping to discuss a more formal partnership, Wilson continued. Perhaps you could visit campus next month. We have some ideas about how the conservatory and the foundation might work together. Before Alex could respond, a hand touched his elbow. Diane, elegant in a simple black dress, her tablet replaced for once by a small clutch. Sorry to interrupt, she said, but it's nearly time. The kids are ready backstage. Alex nodded to Wilson. We'll definitely continue this conversation. As he made his way toward the stage, he spotted familiar faces in the crowd. Richard and the other board members, now among his strongest allies. Mr. Patel from the hotel, who'd eventually come around and now helped identify service workers with hidden musical talents for the foundation's adult program. And in the front row, his father, still thin but healthier now, his eyes bright with pride. The lights dimmed as Alex took the stage. 2 years of public speaking had eased his nerves, though he still felt the familiar flutter in his stomach as he approached the microphone. Good evening, and thank you all for coming. Tonight is a special night for the Reed Foundation, not just because we're celebrating 2 years of growth, but because we're returning to where it all began. He gestured toward the piano beside him. 2 years ago, I stood in this room as a server, not a guest. Mr. Reed challenged someone to play this very piano, promising a CEO position to whoever moved him with their performance. Laughter rippled through the audience as Reed raised his glass in acknowledgement. What followed changed my life, but more importantly, it's now changing thousands of other lives. Alex motioned toward the wings. Tonight you'll hear from some of those lives. Please welcome our Advanced Youth Orchestra, led by someone very special. The audience applauded as the young musicians filed onto the stage, followed by their conductor, the boy with the violin from their very first concert, now taller and more confident, but with the same serious expression as he took his position. 2 years ago, Joey had never touched an instrument, Alex explained. Today he's not only our youngest orchestra leader, but also one of our first scholarship recipients to the National Conservatory's pre-college program. Joey raised his baton, and the orchestra began to play Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor, the very piece Alex had performed that fateful night. But this was a special arrangement, transformed for full orchestra, the familiar melody weaving through different instruments, bringing new depth to the familiar piece. As the music swelled, Alex thought about everything that had happened since that night. 15 music centers across the city, partnerships with 38 public schools to restore music programs, a summer camp program that brought children from different neighborhoods together, an instrument donation initiative that had collected over 10,000 instruments, and most importantly, thousands of children discovering the power of music. The foundation had grown beyond anything he could have imagined. They now had a staff of 65, a headquarters downtown, and satellite offices in 2 other cities where they were beginning to expand their programs. When the orchestra finished, the applause was deafening. Joey took a small bow, his serious expression finally breaking into a grin as his fellow musicians cheered. And now, Alex continued when the audience quieted, we have one more surprise. He walked to the piano and sat down, adjusting the bench just as he had 2 years before. This piece is called Full Circle, and I wrote it for tonight. His fingers touched the keys and the room disappeared. The music started softly, tentatively, like someone taking their first uncertain steps. Then it grew, gaining confidence, adding complexity, occasionally echoing phrases from Chopin before finding its own voice. It told the story of the past 2 years, the challenges, the victories, the moments of doubt, and the breakthrough moments of pure joy. As he played the final notes, Alex opened his eyes to see the entire room on their feet. His father was wiping away tears. Reed was nodding, a rare smile of genuine pride on his face. Joey and the young musicians were cheering loudest of all. Later, as guests mingled and enjoyed the reception, Alex found a quiet moment with his father. I've been meaning to give you something, his father said, pulling a small, worn envelope from his pocket. I found this while going through some old papers. Your mother wrote it before you were born. Alex opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a simple note card with his mother's handwriting. For our child, may you find the music in everything you do. She would be so proud, his father said softly. Not just of all this, he gestured around the ballroom, but of who you've become. Before Alex could respond, Joey appeared at his elbow, violin case in hand, practically bouncing with excitement. Mr. Chen, Dr. Wilson just told me they want me to play a solo at the conservatory's winter showcase. Me, a solo? That's incredible, Joey, Alex said, genuinely thrilled. You've earned it. It's all because of you, the boy said earnestly. You changed everything. Alex shook his head. The music was always in you. We just helped you find it. After Joey rushed off to tell his parents, Alex's father chuckled. That boy reminds me of someone. I was never that talented at his age, Alex protested. Maybe not. But you had the same fire in your eyes. His father nodded toward where Reed stood talking with donors. You should thank him again, you know. Not many would take such a chance on a stranger. Actually, Alex said, I'm planning something better than thanks. The next morning, Alex sat across from Reed in his office, laying out the proposal he'd been working on for months. A national expansion? Reed asked, reviewing the documents. Ambitious. 25 cities in 5 years, Alex confirmed. The model works here. There's no reason it can't work everywhere. Reed studied him carefully. This would be 100 times bigger than what we're doing now. The fundraising alone would be a full-time job. I know. That's why I want to hire a dedicated development team. Alex pushed another folder across the desk. And why I want to find more. People like me. Reed opened the folder to find a proposal for the Second Chance program, an initiative to identify talented individuals from unconventional backgrounds and train them for leadership positions within the expanding foundation. More servers with hidden talents? Reed asked with a raised eyebrow. More people who understand what it means to need a door opened, Alex corrected. Hotel servers, sure. But also retail workers, delivery drivers, night shift nurses. People with passion and potential who just need someone to see them. Reed leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. You know, when I challenged someone to play that piano, I was mostly just bored with the usual crowd. I never expected to find someone who would take what I started and make it into something so much bigger. Is that a yes? Alex asked. It's a yes, Reed confirmed, but on one condition. What's that? That you play at every new center opening. Don't get so busy running things that you forget why you started. Alex smiled, thinking of his mother's note. Find the music in everything you do. Deal, he said, extending his hand. As they shook on it, Alex thought about that night 2 years ago. How close he'd come to walking away. How terrified he'd been to sit at that piano. One moment of courage had changed everything, and now he had the chance to create those moments for others. To open doors. To build bridges through music to help people find their own voices. The song wasn't over. It was just beginning.